Please record permission from the meeting host.
Oh, wait, I stop this. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Kober, and today I'm here with James True from jtrue.com. Sorry about that. James is a programmer, software engineer, and he has written the following books: Blueprint of Mind Control and The Spell of the Six Dragons. Blueprints, not blueprint. So James, welcome to Night Flight.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Judith.
James, do you want to add something, what you have done, what the listeners should know about you?
The last time I listened to myself try and tell the listeners how qualified I was, I got really mad at myself for trying to show off the whole time. So maybe we could just get into it and your readers could decide if I know what I'm talking about or not.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions though about it. So
what brings a young gentleman like you with a background in programming and computers to research the subject of mind control?
Because of my own mind control and because of what I see happening around me in my community. It's all been just inspired by a sense of activism. I've always been sort of an activist in my free time throughout my life, whether it be some environmental causes when I was younger or some wildlife causes or just things that interest me. And mind control became something that I had no choice but to confront. I just really saw it head on a few years ago. And once I saw the blueprint for it, I became very invested in sharing that information with other people.
Okay, and what would that blueprint look like in your book?
So the blueprint for mind control is really easy. And what I've done is I studied philosophy and religion in college. So I've always been really interested in belief and you know, what drives us and what beliefs work versus what beliefs kind of fall by the wayside. And so part of this belief is looking at politics, because politics in a lot of ways, actually politics is a religion in very much so. In fact, religion used to be an arm of politics, and now it's sort of this, it's just the right arm or the left arm. They're just different aspects of the same thing. So I just kept noticing that all my religious studies were coming up whenever I was discussing politics with someone, because I was seeing someone register a dogmatic belief. And just to clear it up, I'm not trying to say that the quest for God is dogmatic or I'm talking strictly about the institution of religion, just to clear that up. But anyway, through all that, I saw this exact same pattern, and it wasn't until I actually wrote it down that I started to see this blueprint spread into other areas. And that blueprint is 3 steps. It's really simple. The first step is if you want to mind control someone, you're going to pick your target and you're going to have 3 things that you're going to want to do to them to lock them into a state of mind control. Step 1 is to convince that person they're broken. This can be in any way you want. This could be through politics, this could be through science, this could be through religion, this could be through an interpersonal relationship. Step 1 is target is broken. Now, it's one thing to be broken, but you actually have to add step 2, which is a requirement that for them to fix themselves, they're going to have to go outside of their own sphere of influence and look for help from someone else. So step 2 creates a dependency, a codependency on an outside force to remove the illusory step 1, which is you're broken. So step 1, you're broken. Step 2, you can't fix it yourself. That's really important. Now, when you can't fix it yourself and you know that you're broken, now you're controllable. Now you have someone that thinks they need help and is desperately looking for it outside themselves. And that's when the cult comes in. I use cult really broad. There are soft cults and there are hard cults. There are good cults. My family is a cult. My neighborhood is a cult. So, you know, there's a big range here of what this word means. But step 3 is basically servicing the cult. So if you were to target an individual by saying, you were born inherently evil, you were born into a system of sin, you are flawed from the moment you're born, That's convincing the target you're broken. Step 2 is to say you can fix yourself, but you're going to need the church to watch over you to keep you in line. This is not something you're going to be able to keep up with yourself. You're going to have to come to us. If you don't come to us, you're only going to be worse. So that would be step 2. And then, of course, step 3 is salvation through service. So the church would say, you would be less evil if you could bring more to our flock. The more you could recruit, then in the eyes of God or in the eyes of the church or in anyone else's eyes, you would be less evil because you're offsetting your evilness by bringing more people to us. So those are the 3 steps, and that's just religion. This exact same blueprint works in politics, it works in small group dynamics, it works in business. It literally works in everything. It works in a relationship, a marriage, a family. So I just kept noticing this pattern, and I just kept saying, hey, there's that pattern again. and I got so tired of people saying, no, you're just simplifying it, that I wrote a book. And my book is 47 chapters. That's why it's called Blueprints, because it's all the exact same thing. It's 47 different chapters that hit just crazy different aspects of life, but they all have that exact same theme, that 3-step process to mind control. And so after I've used this and after I've written the book, I found that I can use this blueprint to actually determine if someone is lying to me. I can listen to someone's argument and I know right away, wait, they're not actually using science, they're simply applying the blueprint to me. And so to me, I found it to be an incredibly helpful tool for my own awakening. And I'm getting the response from other people that it's helping them in the same way. It's just recognizing that pattern. And once you see it, it's like poof, it dissolves. It instantly goes away. You're no longer under that spell because it's just so obvious.
Mm-hmm. That with this pattern that you just described, what usually goes along with it is a savior.
Yes.
And let's pick someone in politics. I remember very well when, especially when Obama was running for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
man, you could have the impression the Messiah himself is coming.
Yeah. Yeah. The hot dog finger, he has such a brilliant oratory presence, like a fine tenor, like a singer. And he understood the blueprint of mind control perfectly. In fact, he was a Manchurian candidate. But that election was actually 2 Manchurian candidates because John McCain was also a Manchurian candidate. So it really didn't even matter if Obama lost or won. We still ended up with exactly the same people in charge of our country, sadly.
Yeah. And how did you break that spell? Okay, you recognized the pattern at first, and then did you take any action?
I started complaining about it on social media, and then my friends would ignore me or shut me out because a lot of them were very into Obama, and I called out Obama a lot, but it never got anywhere. And then I started really studying, well, how do I penetrate this belief? Like, to me, it became a really fascinating experiment to, well, how do you convert someone who's been converted? How do you break the spell of someone under mind control? And so I began to just experiment with my friends, which doesn't sound nice, but it didn't matter. I felt like that they were just lost and whatever. Maybe it was wrong of me. But anyway, I just started experimenting with them. I started trying different things to see, well, how could I spur them can I break this spell? Is there anything I can do that I can apply to get them to change in any way? And overall, the answer is nothing. There's nothing I could do that it's going to be their own personal belief. However, in all these experiments, I've definitely learned how tools can be applied that once you're under mind control, it's really important that this only works when you're under mind control. But once you're under mind control, you can apply 2 tools to move a sheep anywhere. Excuse me. And I don't say sheep like to be derogatory. It just fits. It's when you're under mind control, think of someone as being a sheep. And then you have the crook and the flail. These are the instruments of Egypt. It's the sacred crook and the flail of a pharaoh. It's basically a cat of 9 tails, something to beat someone with, and then a shepherd's crook, which is a nice gentle hook. So this is basically applying two concepts, shame or fame. So you can either apply shame to someone and make them move away from you, or you can apply fame to someone and make them come towards you. And this is really the magic of the crook and the flail. So the crook would be fame. You're comforting someone. Imagine a shepherd, grabbing the sheep by the neck, which sounds cruel, but it's actually the crook kind of goes around there and you can pull them back. That's bringing you someone to someone with, this was the golden child. This is the role of the golden child, where you treat someone as you put them on a pedestal, versus the flail, which is when you're literally just beating someone to move out of the way. And through politics, through religion, through science, through family, through personal relationships, anyone who's lost in this blueprint is moved by these crook and flail. And I only noticed that just by trying that myself with my own friends. Environmentalism is a great example of that. Environmentalism is used to shame people. It's a shaming thing. In fact, one of my chapters is called Carbon Footprint. And I basically explain to everyone how the carbon footprint is a blueprint for mind control. It wants to print a picture in your head that there's a nice, crisp, clean, sandy beach. And you as a human, as you walk on it, you're leaving these dirty, sooty, oily, black footprints everywhere you go. And everything about what you step on, what you eat, what you taste, what you breathe is poison. In fact, you are exhaling poison. This is what the mind control wants you to believe. So you end up with people that are taping all their trash to their body and keeping their trash for an entire year because they feel shame. They don't want to participate in a system where they're dirty. They've been convinced that they are a foreigner that's been brought to earth like a cancer cell, and that we've been placed here on this earth and we're ruining it, that we're the ones that are destroying it. And that's a really big sense of mind control. But bees don't do that. Birds don't do that. Animals don't have this notion in their head that I'm evil. That's why I know it's mind control. And through studying my environmentalism, because again, I used to be pretty involved in environmentalism, I already knew that a lot of what the EPA was claiming, for example, or what the UN was claiming was simply bunk, that this data was tainted for the sole purpose of mind control. It was being turned into the flail of the shepherd, basically.
Would you say that this shame and blame game is a, let's say, a mild form of black magic?
I think that we are looking at pharaonic magic from Kemet, which is the land of Egypt. Did I just lose you? My video's frozen. Wait, there you are. We still on? Sorry about that. My video just stopped. This is a form of black magic. In fact, I traced back the roots of the Egyptian dynasties, and I noticed how come their dynasties lasted for thousands of years, and then we get into Rome, and someone like Alexander, who literally conquered, most of the world, can only keep his kingdom for 80 years. And I just kept noticing, why did leaders get so bad at maintaining control? And I really just have started to apply the mind control into that. And I personally believe that what we're looking at is a form of black magic, that the Pharaoh of old, who originally gave me that symbol of the crook and the flail, was using these tools as a form of black magic to possess people and to intrinsically make them see the Pharaoh as a savior, as you said. That savior role got replaced. Let's talk about Caesar for a second. A pharaoh, Cleopatra, was beloved. Caesar was feared. So now Cleopatra, although she lost, she was the last pharaoh, but the point is that the pharaoh, they're going to last longer because they have a control that comes from a state of belovedness versus, say, fear or might or power. And so I've been tracing this black magic through, and I'm under the impression now that most of the world is controlled by the same group of people that are using 3 different forms of black magic to control us. And it's all the same blueprint of mind control. It's just that one is a military control, and that would be America. We are the arm of the world military. And the second is financial control. This would be your greed. This would be keeping the mind in a state of pleasure, of constant hypnotism. This would be London. And then you've got the Vatican and Rome, in which you're spiritually keeping someone in line. So those are three different ways of controlling the body. You've got might and power, you've got mind and spirit, and then you've got spirit and religion. So by creating these three different power centers around the world, the people that are controlling the world are controlling it behind the scenes. We're under the impression that the maitre d' that you would see at the restaurant, we think is the leader. We think that the maitre d' at the restaurant owns that restaurant, and it's not true. We're sitting in the seating section called America, and next to us is a seating section called Germany. And we throw food at each other because we think that we're in different restaurants. But it doesn't matter who's maitre d'. It doesn't matter who's bartender. It doesn't even matter what section is called Germany and what section is called America. The entire restaurant is owned by the same people, and we're never going to see their face because it would be far too dangerous.
I think if you want to play that game successfully, what you need to have is a balance of carrot and stick. You cannot only go by the stick, and you cannot only go with a carrot.
Yeah, that's really is the crook and the flail. That's just the modern version of that. It's the carrot and the stick. Yeah, exact same thing. Yeah. That's why we have such a giant bipolarization in politics. That's why Obama was considered such a savior, because of how bad things were before him. And that's why Trump is seen as such an awful thing, because he's such a contrast to that. And that's why in the next election, there'll be another savior that swings it back over to this side. As long as you keep people, how do you hypnotize someone? You go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you don't have that movement, you don't have anything to entertain them. You don't have a rhythm or a pattern you don't have keys to dangle in front of them to keep them entertained. And this is called entrainment. This happens in physics. If you have 4 different motors and you were to leave them in a room together, those motors would eventually get into sync. The vibrations themselves would entrain each of them to where they just find it easier to become in tune with everyone else. This is how you hypnotize someone. This is how you use persuasion. You first you mimic someone, then you lead, you get a little bit ahead of them, and then the next thing you know, they're now following you. So all these tools, I personally think, and I'm still tracing this down, but all these tools I think go all the way back to Egypt. And they're what we consider psychology now was basically magic back then, because only a few people knew these tricks, and they were so effective that any technology that you don't understand is basically going to be interpreted as magic.
So you are not under the impression that Trump will arrest the cabal and glory days are here to come?
I wish I could think that. And I really think that Trump is doing some things, whether intentional or not, that are really helping to fight the cabal. I definitely think that. I don't know if he's doing that on purpose though or not, but what I see happening is that there's a psychology that's leaking out from him, and that psychology is dangerous to the cabal. And if I could put that in one word, it would actually be the word supremacy. Trump is a supremacist of his own destiny, of his own. He has a supremacy about being himself, and he's pushing that on the world. He's pushing back against different things, and whether he means it or not, it's causing an entrainment to happen inside of Americans' minds, at least the ones that support him, that are willing to stand up a little bit quicker now. We're not at the yellow vest moment yet. We're not at a moment where we're actually mobilized, but it's the most I've ever seen Americans even just considering looking around. So I don't see how Trump could be elected if he wasn't fulfilling some sort of cabal obligation. I just don't see how you could. Why would the cabal poison us, lie to us, make up all these wars? Like, why would they do all that but not mess with the Electoral College? Like, why would they just, they're going to screw up everything but not the Electoral College, which would be the one thing that would hurt them. So, that's why I have a hard time believing that he's completely, the Perseus in this situation that's coming in to save the day. Not to mention, if you were to look at his relationship with Netanyahu, and if you were to look at how many dual citizens we have in Congress, I personally believe that Trump took out Saudi Arabia within the first week he was in office. From the hotel room, you might have heard the story that there's a hotel room. I believe that's more than we think it is. I think that was actually a complete takeover of the country. And that country is going to be divided up. And Greater Israel is a campaign promise, I believe, that will be fulfilled. I don't think Trump would have all of his children convert to Judaism, nor would his daughter marry the godchild of Netanyahu, Kushner, if this wasn't some kind of alliance, a world cabal alliance, basically. No one gets that high up unless they're, maitre d' is not going to get hired unless the owner meets them, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also do not think that he is without the support of the cabal in there. Whether we like to believe that or not doesn't matter.
Yeah, it'd be too easy to take him out. If it was really that dangerous, it would be too easy to take him out.
Yeah. So these are, yes, it is mind control. And to some extent, we are all under mind control.
Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah, I definitely am.
And, but these are still mild forms. I had my interview with Jerry Mazinski yesterday, and I asked him before that interview if he ever came across what we call targeted individual.
Mm-hmm.
And he said no. And I have no reason to doubt him, but I definitely know that you have looked into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sure have. First of all, I can't speak highly enough of Marzinski's work. I've relied on that heavily myself. In fact, he's one of my chapters in my book, or at least his research is. But as far as targeted individuals go, I think the best example I could illustrate that I've personally looked into is the Parkland incident. Just to familiarize some people, Parkland is a school in Florida, in America. And about 2 years ago, there was a mass shooting there. And the shooting was 17 people were shot by a 17-year-old kid named Nicholas Cruz. That 17-year-old was really scrawny, basically like a pipsqueak kind of figure. And he lost his mother a year prior. He'd been hearing demon voices in his head, and the sheriff's department was aware of it. Everyone was aware of it. Everyone. I believe that he is a targeted individual. I believe that he was put up to participate in this ritual. There's also eyewitnesses that reported more than one shooter there. And the one really credible witness I found, there's a lot of witnesses, but just one in particular I felt was really credible. She's a teacher there. She saw the figure come into their room, to the door, the gunman, and he was dressed in full battle gear. He had a mask on, full Kevlar. I don't even think Nicholas Cruz could stand up in that much weight in Kevlar. I mean, he's a very small guy. And if you look at what happened is the shooters came into the building. A shooter went on each floor, and they were just shooting down the hallway. And when I add this up in my mind, this is not someone who's trying to mass kill people. This is someone who's trying to mass scare people. In other words, he's shooting people back into the classroom. This entire drill was happening during a test shooting drill at the school. The security guard, who knows every student by name, was called off campus an hour before the active shooting drill at the school. Like, if you were in charge of security, would you want to be on campus during an active shooter drill? Or do you think that your time is better spent somewhere else? It's every single thing about it adds up as this is complete bogus. And then if you follow where Nicholas Cruz was picked up, I don't know what happened, but this is what I think happened. I think that he got a text on his phone that morning of school. He wasn't at school, by the way. He got a text on his phone. And that text was maybe from a girl he knows. And that girl said, hey, you know, Nicholas, you need to come down to school or whatever, blah, 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 or whatever. I think she might have even said, we're going to McDonald's afterwards. Why don't you come by? Nicholas went to school. When he, okay, so as he's getting to school, the shooting drill is happening. The shooting drill is actually real life happening. The police report calls in. You can hear the dispatch. Like they're actually, you can hear the full live conversation. The officer is asked for, the dispatch asked the officer for a shooter description. She goes, we need a shooter description, shooter description. So this is all by radio. A shooter description is how you save other officers. You know, you're telling them, hey, look, you're going to look for a guy that he's 6'1", he's this big, he's wearing a green coat. That's how you save lives. The shooter description said, suspect is a man. His name is Nicholas Cruz. And that's it. So imagine yourself at that shooting event and you're there to try and protect people. You've now just been told that the student, you know his name, but you're not from the school. So you have no way of, a name is not a physical characteristic. It's not how you would officially give an ID. So all that said, I feel like I'm getting too deep in this, but he left from the shooting. He went directly to McDonald's. Like after he killed 17 people, he chose to go to McDonald's. And then when he got to McDonald's, he left, he was looking for someone to meet. I think it was this girl. And then he went to Dairy Queen. If you're hearing demon voices in your head, and if it's so torturous that you are going to kill 17 people, anytime this has happened in the past, that shooter will kill themselves. They cannot handle the pain of doing that. Now, if you think about what would it be if you were being possessed by a demon, the only way that could be worse is if you were sent to a prison for the rest of your life to be possessed by that demon. I mean, nothing, that would be the last thing you would ever want to do is go to prison after that. You would want to kill yourself or find some way of relieving that pain, such as shooting other people. But my point is that none of this adds up. A year prior to that, they picked this guy. I think they picked a couple of them because this entire area is rife with shooters. There's another shooter incident at the airport just a few miles away where another guy was hearing demon voices. So I'm under the impression that there's a crack FBI team that's wandering around the country that know how to target an individual. And they could target him with sound. They can use voice of God technology where the skull is basically a parabola dish. It's able to pick up these things and you can hear thoughts. You can hear what someone else is saying. Just to tell your listeners, I'm not making this up. This is active in the military. We have this technology. We've actually utilized it in Iraq in a test case. There's full write-ups about it. So I'm not pulling in the cookie jar of things that are hard to believe here. This is just standard protocol. And if you think about how would you move a flock? If you've got a flock that's blocking a gate and you want to get them across the river, you're going to have to smack a few of those sheep. You're going to have to stimulate the crowd in some way to get them to move. And the best way to do that is to drop fear over here. When you have fear over here, everyone goes over here. So all of this makes sense. All of this adds up as a form of mind control. The targeted individuals are those lead sheep. They're the people that we choose to say, we're going to have you do this, and it's going to cause all these other people to run over here, things like that.
Yeah, you are right. It is a real technology, and I recently read an article where they are admitting they can do it via laser. And of course, they presented it as this wonderful tool that in case of emergency, the authorities, law enforcement, what have you, can give you directions what to do, where to hide, where to run, and nobody else can hear that.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. In my article that I covered this, there's about maybe 10 cases of targeted individuals. All of them have the same theme where they're hearing voices in their head. They're hearing demonic voices. A few of them were smart enough. Nicholas Cruz said it was demons. But Aaron Alexis, this was the DC Capitol shooter. This was back in 2013. He thought it was the CIA. In fact, he was traveling a lot for work, and he had to move out of his house because he felt like they were attacking his house. He moved into a hotel. In the hotel, he was able to determine what room it was coming from. Like he actually knew. It's like, no, it's actually up and coming from this direction. And being in the military, I think he just understood that this technology exists out there. So he was constantly trying to outrun it, but at the same time, no one would believe him. Exact same MO for the guy that ran into the Fort Lauderdale hospital and shot. Exact same MO for Raleigh Castile. He was on the I-96 corridor in California, and he felt like helicopters were stalking him and beaming this stuff into his head. I don't know on all the, Myron May is another one. I mean, it's just so many articles that have the exact same MO. I can't tell your audience for sure, you know, this person was a demon, this person was the target individual. But I do know that higher ups in the government understand how demons work. And they've also understood how they can artificially inseminate a demon. And by doing that, they really have solved the entire equation, because now you have a victim perpetrator, a controllable perpetrator that no one will ever believe for the rest of their life. No one will ever believe their story. And that locks them in. That's when you really create a mind control victim. You're able to lock them inside their own head because you're telling everyone else, no, it's just hallucination. No, you know, what he's saying isn't even real. And that's really where the torture happens. I think that's really where most of the harm is done. That's where the targeted individual will feel completely abandoned and will blame society, because he's literally telling the truth to everyone around him, but no one's listening to him. No one cares, because it's too uncomfortable to have to swallow the reality that he's living through. It's a terrible thing.
When we look at, the people that are facilitating this, working on that type of technology, and no matter what they are saying, it's in case of emergency,
Yeah.
we have this wonderful tool. It is a very, very sinister thing, at least in my view.
Oh, yeah.
Because it can be misused for so many things that we probably cannot even wrap our minds around. Would you say that those people who are working to increase that and add more properties to it and make it better, faster, and smarter, do you think that they themselves are under some demonic control?
It's a great question. I think that bureaucracy itself is a satanic system. The chain of command in any military that you see involves, for you to do well and to serve the unit, you have to unhinge your tuition and hand it to someone else. You're taking your moral authority, the decisions that you make that you consider moral, and you're handing them over to someone higher than you. That system itself, because it's so ingrained, people don't know that that's a black magic satanic system. The entire corporate world is a satanic system in that way, because again, you're delegating your personal authority and responsibility to someone else, except for on weekends and, you know, a couple of weeks out of the year for vacation. And so that does create a mind control that's very real. It's why I didn't do so well working in the corporate environment. It wasn't that I was wandering around going, this is mind control. I just kept not doing well at it. You know, I was in the military. I was in the Navy for 6 years. I did awful. I was constantly questioning what I was being told. I was wanting to know. I was activated during Iraq War, and I was asking my CO, so what did they do? Like, can we talk about what they did, and what our goal is here, and why, and again, I did terrible in the military because of that. I've done terrible everywhere except for as a writer because of that, because I'm constantly asking that kind of stuff. But yes, the entire system, the entire world, if you look at any kind of system that has a pyramid approach, you're going to find a satanic system, and that comes from Kemet. That's black magic. It's a way of justifying someone into just following orders. They feel like they're doing the right thing by doing the wrong thing. That's mind control.
Yeah, the cult of order followers.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no end.
No, there's not, because they're rewarded. Yeah, we reward those people. They're the ones that are put on top. Yeah, they're our heroes. So yeah, it's never going to change unless more people, I'll say, awaken. But I don't know how likely that is. I think that we're looking at a system that's been perfected for not thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years. Like, I would say that maybe in a few generations past, or a few cultures past, like even in the Younger Dryas or something, that the same kind of mind control was in place.
Yeah. And the general public usually thinks that those auto followers are there to protect them, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, it feels a lot. Imagine if you were in a prison, and imagine when you have your recess, when you get to go out in the prison yard, imagine some people out there writing a constitution, and they're spreading it around to the other prisoners, and they've decided, look, kickball, here are the rights of kickball. Everyone gets a chance at the ball, and everyone gets to be captain 1 week. And after a few generations, no one thinks they're in a prison anymore. In fact, they're told, well, you live in the land of the free. You live on block B. That's the most free land there is in this entire prison. So, what are you complaining about? You should be lucky. In fact, B block, we need to liberate block F because they need to be free too. So let's go make them conform to our kickball constitution. And so that's what we're looking at. We never see the warden. We're only going to see these interpolitical systems that basically are like dangling keys in front of a baby. They're just distractions that make us think that whatever it is we need to think. That's the thing. They're not actually in. Thought control is important, but they don't care what you like. Once you're in the prison, if you're just playing kickball, they don't care what you think. Like, you can have whatever constitution you want. You can have a flag. You can even yell at the warden. You could look up at the warden, or the guard or whatever, and say, "I hate you." That's fine. None of that is any flack off anyone's back because the walls are up. And in fact, when you're playing kickball, you don't even look out of bounds because you're just in the game. The game is just within these four bases. That's all it is. So if a ball goes out, it means the game's over. So no one wants to go out of bounds. Everyone needs to stay inside. It's a brilliant, brilliant strategy.
And I think that is part of the reason why they gave us social media. You can go out there on Twitter, Snapchat. It doesn't matter on Facebook, not so much anymore. And then you can complain and yell and fight tooth and nails about this politician, that politician.
Yeah.
And you can complain all day long. It's like an outlet for your anger, for your rage, but nothing will change.
Yeah. I think the internet was dangerous for them to unleash because in the very beginning, they didn't have the control yet. Like, this is before Google was the only search engine. I think before Google was the only search engine, the internet was very dangerous. But they knew how slow we are to adopt new technology. They knew how slow we are to do these things. So someone like me, the things that we're talking about right now, those I think they probably do consider a little bit dangerous. I don't think that they're worried about me, but what I mean is that they foresaw, just like the printing press. Okay, this is the exact same thing happened with the printing press. Before the printing press, only the Roman Catholic Church had the Bible, and it was in Latin, and that was just the way it is. So you had one person telling everyone, this is what the Bible says. It wasn't until the printing press came that we could print our own thoughts, that we could print in our own language that everyone could read. That became dangerous for the church. In fact, the church lost their stronghold then. However, the church knew they were going to lose their stronghold then. They were already instigating the next realm of control, which is these three power centers that I talk about. So the internet is the exact same thing. Right now, it's a little bit dangerous. I think right now the gate actually is sort of open. But as Google gets established, as social media gets established, you're seeing all the censorship start to throw down. Right now, we're seeing the censorship, but in 10 years, we won't notice it anymore. No one will recognize it. It'll just simply be, what are you talking about? Let's play kickball, and everyone will just get back into that mode.
Yeah, and then you will have a social credit system.
Yeah, and then the social credit system, of course, yeah, which is already starting up, which is, yeah.
You said something bad about our leader, -20 points.
Yeah.
And then the other day, something fell accidentally out of your jacket. Yes, we know you didn't notice that, but you didn't pick it up. So you polluted. Another 30 points subtracted. Sorry, can't buy a train ticket.
Yeah, no cream corn for you. I'm sorry. You're not going to get cream corn today. And what's interesting about that is once that gets established, the guards get to go home because we're policing ourselves at that point. Because now all we have to do is just set an incentive to one person. Oh, you lost those 20, I'll give you cream corn tonight, but you're going to have to salvate, you're going to have to service the cult. You're going to have to go out and find all the infractions that your other inmates are doing. And if you bring those back to me, we will give you credit. And once that system is in place, then it's all over because we really are eating our own. I mean, we're already doing that now, but it'll become a full-time job because we'll be on the basic income by then. So anything out of the ordinary, just the slightest hint of a spoon of cream corn is going to make people kill each other to get it. It's just, and this is how humans procreate. You know, the strongest man is going to get the best mate. So if you're all in a prison, the only way you can show you're the strongest man is be the one that has cream corn. Like, be the dude that's won that cream corn for that night. That's all it takes because it's all mental anyway. So, and that's, like I said, it's already happening all around us. It's just getting worse slowly and we're watching it.
Yeah, and I think the wards also can go home because more and more that will be done by an AI.
Yeah, if it's not already. It's hard to say.
Yeah. So when I look at a computer, do I look at magic as well? I mean, we have a cursor. We have a type pad that you could consider to be a modern Ouija board. You have scrolls.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, how do you see that?
Well, not only that, but we look into a black screen and scry something out of the screen. We find ancient wisdom from scrying through the black screen that tells us something. This is the obsidian rock that the famous Dr. John Dee, the black magician of Queen Elizabeth, I think it was Elizabeth, was doing too. He was scrying through the black onyx or whatever, obsidian, to find out. As a programmer, I've known that writing programs has been magic for a long time. You're setting up a ritual. You're creating a circle, which would be your compiling environment. So whatever language you're going to write in, the scroller, the magician, walks into the center of that and starts uttering code. If his utterances are correct, if they come in the right order, then something happens. Magic happens. And so, of course, it's a spell. You could almost argue that the internet is, how do I put this? The internet's always been here. Like, we've always had this psychic internet that's always been here. We've always been telepathically connected. But they took that connection away from us a long time ago, and they slowly give it back to us under a cord, like attached to some cord or something, like it's chained into something else. Private property is an excellent example of that. Like, right now we're under the impression that we own property, but actually what we own is the ability to give the state money for the property that we stay on for an extended period of time. And that's only if we've paid off the mortgage company that we do the same thing for. So again, we used to just be able to live on the land, but now we're told, well, this is better because now you own it. But actually you don't even own it. All we do is rent and lease it. So this is an example of what I mean by they're taking magic away from us, but then selling it back to us with a chain attached to it. And I think in a lot of ways, that's really what the internet is. They convinced us that we didn't have magic a long time ago. And now they're slowly unrolling that magic to us with a price tag.
Do you have, I have a strong feeling that you refuse to be labeled in terms of Muslim, Hindu, blah, 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 because I refuse to be labeled as well. But what is your, let's say, spiritual background?
Studying religion, I've put a lot of thought in this. My next book that I want to write, um, I want to unwrap the Bible. I want to eliminate the bloodline cult from the Bible, and I want to eliminate the Passover sacrifice, and I want to eliminate any mentions of a sacred bloodline. I think that the idea of a sacred bloodline was inserted into our Gospels to accommodate the idea of a monarch king, someone who is born by blood to lead the rest of the people. I think that if you want to install that idea in someone's mind, you need to install the concept of a bloodline, of a holy bloodline. So when I look back at the Gospels, I see a true, beautiful story that took place thousands of years in BC about a guy named John the Baptist, and possibly a separate guy named the Good Samaritan. And these two people were doing some pretty amazing things as they wandered around the country. And these things were written about in the Gospels. Those Gospels were corrupted to include this bloodline story. And when you have a bloodline story, you now have a chain of command, because now you have, now there's a Son of God. And what comes with the Son of God that most people don't realize is everyone gets demoted the second we create a Son of God, because now we are no longer God's children. I mean, some will argue, no, we're still God's children. But seriously, just think about it. Well, wait a minute. If God only has one begotten Son of flesh and blood, and he's gone now, how can we be his children? Like, that doesn't make sense. What's happening is that you're saying, we are still below God, but now we're below God another level. Like we're down one more level, and now in between there's this guy. And then you notice that in between Jesus came St. Peter. So now Peter, who started the Catholic Church, says, no, you guys are actually pushed down one more level. Because see, God, right before he died, he said, hey, Peter, I'm giving you the keys. I mean, come on. He's using the element of keys as if it's something locked, as if it's something that's it is a treasure, but it's not a treasure if it's this thing that you're coveting and that you're distributing to another person. So I try and call myself a Christian. I call myself a Christian. However, I can't go out in public and practice my form of Christianity without someone calling me Lucifer or Satan, because of what I just told you about, which is I firmly believe, after looking at the Bible, that this bloodline cult has been installed. And that's why there's only 66 books. That's why you have an apocrypha of things that are ignored. That's why the Gospel of Thomas is completely thrown out of the Bible. And it's the one book that actually talks about a different definition of the word cross, of actually what a cross means. So throughout the entire Christian rising, I've seen a corruption of every sigil, of every symbol, of every archetype we can, to install shame and to install the ability to receive salvation from that shame. But it's only going to be by accepting the Nicene Creed, which is something that was also a pretty big mind cult thing, that took over too.
Yeah. And then we have this very strange ritual. To me, it's a little bit, it reminds me of cannibalism.
Oh, yeah.
The drinking of the blood and the eating of flesh.
Yeah, do this in remembrance of me. And if you look back in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they were having a Passover sacrifice every year anyway. They were looking for someone to, it's like, no, look, we want a human we want a blood sacrifice, actually was what it was. And that's why Jesus is called the Passover lamb. He's literally the chosen one to be slaughtered. And before, here's exactly how evil works, because picture Jesus on the cross, but now try and picture just the cross. Like try as hard as you can to take Jesus off that cross and just look at that symbol of the cross. It's not an X, it's a cross. And that symbol used to mean something before we stuck a person on it. Like before we crucified someone. In other words, this body is taking over the symbol of the cross underneath it. So what did the cross mean before that? What was happening before we put Jesus on there? And back in those times, messiahs were everywhere. Messiahs were thought leaders back then. anyone who had a really good idea, that people were just, oh, I want to hear what, Bob has to say. Bob was a messiah. He had a vision of something and he was sharing it with people. That's what I think was happening probably with John the Baptist. I think it's a fascinating theory to consider that John the Baptist might have actually had a near drowning experience. And that drowning experience does what any near-death experience does to anyone. It really makes you rethink your life. It really makes you look at your core and go, what's going on? And that's why you have this story of the Good Samaritan, this wealthy person that was wandering the country, just helping people, just trying to inject love wherever he could. This is someone who's been inspired maybe by some tragedy in his life that caused him to wake up, and he's simply spreading that message. So you look at Rome and you've got this crazy, all these cults running around the city. And you're like, how do I control all these people? It's not working. Alexander lost Rome within 80 years. How the first triumvirate in Rome, the second triumvirate, these are people that were trying to make alliances and try and stabilize and figure things out. For a couple millennium, we were struggling with that. And then you see Constantine. Constantine goes up into Germany, goes up into England. He's like so frustrated because the forest is full of these pagans and they're not normal Romans. Like, you can't shame them. You can't even talk to them. You talk to them about God and they're like, God is the leaves and the trees and the roots. And he's like, well, how do I deal with that? How do I command someone that doesn't believe that I have an authority over them to define God, to define taxes? They don't even have villages. I mean, they're literally living out of the trees. And so I think that's when he starts to think up this idea of a mind cult of how do I install this salvation universally? And the only way he could do that is to say, no more messiahs, okay? Everyone who said you're a messiah, you're not a messiah anymore. There was one messiah, his name was Jesus, and we killed him. So now there could be no more. So now you've just taken all these brilliant ideas that were flowing through Rome and you've shamed all of them. You've said all of those are blasphemy. Anyone who has any new ideas is blaspheming the original, the one Messiah. And that's why if you look at the Nicene Creed, the most important part, like 386 bishops met and they said, we're going to fix this. We're going to control the minds of everybody. How are we going to do it? And it all came down to one phrase, one Lord, one Lord. When you put the words one and Lord together, you now have a pyramid. You now have a mind cult. And they made sure that that stuck and that anyone who disagreed or felt any way different about that was seriously admonished for it.
Do you believe that the Council of Nicaea gave us the real word of God?
No, I think they gave us the first realm of mind control. Yeah, absolutely. I think the pagans knew what God was. And I write about that a lot. I don't think you could try any harder than when you were defining your own definition of who you think God is. Like, I don't think that there's a better exercise of faith than to put your powers of imagination, inspiration, investigation, for you to apply those things as hard as you can and to try and discern God as hard as you can. In other words, I'd like to think that God would reward us not by who got it right, but by who was trying like really hard. Like, who was living going, I think God's a turtle. Okay, I realize I'm wrong. Now I think God is that, like just constantly striving and constantly trying to redefine, am I getting closer to God by doing this? Instead, we're told, sit back in the easy chair. We've already told you who God is. We've already told you who all this is. So now no one even has to try anymore. In fact, faith itself changes dramatically because now faith is not something that lives through every breath that you take. I think the pagans, everything they did was faith. If they would cover themselves in mud and eat walnut dust and start to go into some type of hallucinating vision, they're practicing their faith. They're trying as hard as they can to be connected to this idea, this realm of nature. Meanwhile, you have this Nicene Creed that's saying there's one Lord, and then you have something even worse happening, which is the birth of materialism. The idea that a Medusa can petrify matter itself and become lifeless, that we now have this concept of lifeless blocks that are thrown in like a giant ball pit that you would play in, and there's just no life in it at all. But we're somehow living inside of this emptiness around us. I think that is the deepest form of black magic I've ever seen. In fact, if you look at what outer space is like the creepiest thing that anyone could ever make up. I personally think the Big Bang and outer space are massive mind control, because it takes the individual and it says, you are encompassed in a vat of vacuum that no sound will ever escape from. God will never hear your voice because you're surrounded by a vacuum, and you're shrinking millions of times per second. You're getting tinier and more insignificant every breath you take. Meanwhile, the walls around your prison are growing faster than the speed of light, and you are just becoming more and more nothing, more and more vacuum, more and more emptiness. And this is what God made for you. And he put you at the end of the corner lot of a spiraling galaxy that's meaningless, at the end of a giant chain of this that's nothing, and you're lucky to get sunlight. And frankly, if an asteroid comes and hits you, you probably had it coming anyway. Like, this is the world that they're painting for us. But if you look at what science was saying about space in 1904, like the moment 1905 hit, that's when materialism became mind control. Before that, we were still considering, no, space is an ether. Space is this plasma, this, this existing neon plasma stuff that we're all connected to. And a spark over here can cause a spark over here, and that's how it works. Even today, we still can't prove that space is real. Like, all we have is the one agency, the same space agencies that are telling us the same thing. But meanwhile, the experiments of Michelson Morley, all the other experiments that we've done where we've tried to prove that the Earth is moving, have proved not. Meanwhile, we're still proving that the ether exists. So we're getting worse right now. We're being told we're technologically advancing, but actually the lies are technically growing around us so much that we have no idea what's right anymore.
Yeah, I think the matrix gets pulled over our eyes more and more and more on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And that's how you would control someone. You would literally lie to them about everything. It could be trivial, it could be important, it doesn't matter. That's why I think Al Gore is a black magician. And I think that his environmentalist movement, in fact, if you look at the recycling logo, if you look in the center of the recycle logo, it's actually a Star of David. Like, it's an ancient, let me see if I can do this real quick. It's an ancient Star of David. And I think that he's installing that into our psyche. And by doing that, he becomes more of a black magician. Can you guys see the symbol on my screen right now?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, great. If you, sure, you can see a recycling logo, but look in the center. Here you have a triangle, and here you have another triangle. So it's things like that, these clever little subtle things that they do that gain them street cred with their black magicians. So Al Gore gets to come back and tell people, I sold everybody on the carbon footprint. That's how much of a black magician I am. And look how many people believe it. So that's what gives him street cred among everyone else. So what you're looking at is an underground group of liars that are high-fiving each other to see who can get away with the biggest lie that still has enough of the black occult elements that make it obvious, but yet we still fall for it. That's why we see this stuff everywhere. That's why symbolism is so important to them.
I think symbolism and images, that is our first language.
Yes.
And then that what we are speaking right now, that is the wool pulled over us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's the language of contracts. That's the language that imprisoned us. archetypes you can't really pin down legally. You know, one person would see a recycle symbol, another person would see a Star of David, for example. Words are much more liable. Like we're more, and we live in a world of words. The elite don't use words. They would never write stuff down, I don't think, because they would use the Egyptian method of uttering. What I utter becomes true. That's why a pharaoh, I think, was seen as so powerful. Everything that the pharaoh did was a ceremony. You wouldn't just see the pharaoh, oh, he's out there on the balcony eating some grapes. That would never happen because he's a black magician. So a pharaoh would get up right before dawn and come out and raise his palm to raise the sun. And then after the sun is up, he would then go back inside. In other words, every moment of his life is a magical spell. And if you're brought up from the moment you're born to say, no, the pharaoh rises the sun in the morning, that's going to stick. And anyone who opposes that, you're going to be so afraid that the sun won't come up because of this blasphemy that you're going to stone that guy and get him out of your crew, you know. So the black magic is real. It works because it causes people to obey.
Mm. And at the same time, you raise people that, yeah, for the most part are reacting strictly emotionally. You know what I mean? Like, you have challenged my mental, my spiritual comfort zone.
Right.
And because you did that, you are evil, you are a witch, you are the Antichrist, whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of, you know, just take a minute, take a step back, think it through. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you cannot point out fallacies or things where it doesn't add up, but strictly coming from that reactionary level, that is really, really not helpful.
I think the hardest thing to come to grips with, at least for me, is that the more I find the truth, the less social I am, the less I'm accepted by society. And they say that truth is a rabbit hole, but I think it's more like a briar patch, like with a lot of thorns, because the second, like, let's say my theory that I've said that countries don't exist, you know, that what we think are countries are just like maitre d's.
Yeah, that is made up shit, nothing else.
That's going to make people very uncomfortable to say that. In other words, so for me to find that truth, I have to crawl under some briars and some thorns, and you know, it rips my shirt maybe. But so now I can still turn around and I can see everyone else inside, you know, and I'm not out yet. I'm just stuck in this briar patch. I'm just uncomfortable. And I can tell people, hey guys, come over here, you know, come check this out. But no one's going to want to do that. They see no benefit to where I am. There's nothing better about being in there. And then I start to doubt, well, our space program, you know, I'm doubting all of our international space programs. And I've uncovered where the ISS is actually used as a blackmail device. It's covered in my book. It's called The Litany of NASA, but it really does uncover. There was an instance where on the ISS where the Italians and the Russians were about to expose the ISS as being fake. They released some press releases. NASA responded. Again, that's me slipping further under the briar patch. I'm getting denser into the thorns. Mm-hmm. And as I turn around as a writer and scream to everyone else, hey, check out this story about how space is fake. No one wants to climb in there with me. No one does. So the more I look for truth, the more I notice I'm on my own journey. No one is going to follow me. All I notice is sometimes as I'm peeking through, as I'm desperately trying to get through, I'll find a little pocket and Judith will be there, you know, or Jerry Mrzinski will be there, or whoever. And you'll start to find allies, but they're just as screwed as you are. Like they're in the same bad spot. So none of us are really even able to help each other because we're at different places. In fact, that's why I don't think it's really important that I have to agree with someone else in their quest for truth. You know, they could have a completely different version of what they think is real. All I care about is who's trying. And that kind of goes back to what I meant about God, about it feels to me that God would be more impressed with us if we were out trying every day to figure out who he was versus just accepting the story that we're told by a few men that you know, died a long, long time ago and had nefarious reasons to make us believe that.
Coming back to space, I had an experience many years ago. I was flight attendant on a flight back from Thailand, and one of the passengers was Ulf Merbold. He is a German astronaut, and he made many trips to the ISS. So he comes to the back galley where I was working, and we had a little bit of time in between service sections, and then he started talking to us about everything that they are doing there and how excited he was. So he was there for, I don't know, almost an hour. But I have to tell you, and that is something that I could tell, you know, usually I have a good feeling for when somebody is trying to sell me a story, a stupid one. But he was convinced to his bones that he was on the ISS.
And you believe him?
I have to say I leave that one on the shelf.
Yeah.
I'm not leaning this way or that way. All I can say is that guy in that moment, the way he was presenting the experiments and how the Russians were there and other nationalities and on and on and on. He was convinced to his bones that he was on the ISS.
Yeah. Well, I would say that NASA is a Masonic organization run by Masons, and in their code it says you were supposed to lie, that, you know, this is a secret organization, you know, you will carry these secrets to your death. This is more important than your wife, more important than your patriotism, you know, this is the most important part of that. And on the anniversary of NASA landing a rover on Mars, the Russians were on the ISS on the anniversary, like 19 years later, but on the day, the Russians are on the ISS and they put out a press release that says, we were out in a spacewalk and we found plankton on the ISS windows. Now, plankton grows in seawater, and this is something that you're not going to find in the vacuum of space. If this was the only thing that happened, I would say it's just a coincidence. You know, you're bound to hit a date every now and then. But 4 months later, the Italians are on a spacewalk, and it's the anniversary of Apollo landing on the moon. And the Italians put out a press release saying one of our astronauts almost drowned by water on a spacewalk. Now, if you take both those dates, these are the two biggest anniversaries of NASA. I mean, you're landing on Mars and you're landing on the moon. I'm not talking about, oh, well, this is the 5th anniversary of a satellite. You know, I mean, this is like, these are big stuff. This is like the two biggest events that you could have. Meanwhile, if you're watching ISS footage, you're seeing literal space bubbles, like bubbles floating up from the ISS. This is documented through hundreds of channels, where, you know, that shows you a little circle, it shows you they're drawing up. Meanwhile, in Texas, the ISS has a training center that's completely underwater in a pool. It's a $7 million facility, and it's full of green screens, like video equipment, where they have green screens underwater behind the ISS, and they claim that's for training. They claim that that you're supposedly able to train for deep space underwater. But underwater is pressure pushing on you. Space is pressure pushing out because you're in a vacuum. So the entire dynamics of all your equipment, of how structurally something needs to be built, are completely opposite. it would actually be closer to build the ISS out of the water because there's less pressure there. Still, they're doing it all underwater, and they're doing it all with green screens. If you add all this up, and if you're already in the briar patch, you know, if you've already crawled under the briar patch and you're already aware that they're going to lie about massive stuff, it becomes harder to accept how this could be true. Like, it becomes really hard to go, so not only do they do this and they do this, and then these two dates happen, and then you're drowning in space and there's sea plankton. It just becomes harder to accept that. And this is kind of what I meant by, as I turn around, I'm alone in here. And I'm even talking to other truthers that probably don't believe what I see. And it doesn't even really matter. Like because we're never going, no one is ever going to all come to the same spot in the briar patch. There's not even enough room for us. And that's actually part of what makes the fencing. The fencing is important because it's a bunch of different lies that almost act like a barbed wire. So there's no clean way out. And as long as there's no clean way out, it just becomes an emotional game. Who's willing to put up with the emotional rebuke that comes with doubting space? Excuse me, that comes with doubting your government. It's a hard thing to get behind. But once you're behind it, space and vaccines have two things really important in common. Both the idea of space and vaccines give you the impression that somewhere out there, there's these super geniuses that have figured something out that's so above and beyond anything that we could ever do as laymen, that it just makes sense for us just to kind of hand over our authority to them, because these guys have conquered space. These guys have made it all the way to Pluto. You know, they've sent a probe out that's, you know, exiting the outer edges of the atmosphere, or we're landing on an asteroid and we're mining it, you know.
And at the same time, they are not capable of solving the problems down here.
Exactly. Well, and if you listen to some of the stories, they become really hard to not like. We're told that it rains diamonds on Neptune. Who wants to be the person to ruin that surprise and tell someone it doesn't rain diamonds on Neptune? That's a lie. I mean, it sounds beautiful. It sounds like, what a beautiful concept. Wow, it rains diamonds on Neptune. So it's a constant black magic. It's a constant fantasy injection. And because it's so far away, this is actually how you know when someone's lying. Anytime you find a bottleneck, or anytime you find a situation where a lot of people can't verify something, you can pretty much guarantee there's going to be a liar hovering around that spot, because that's a feeding spot. You know, that's a bottleneck of energy. You've got 1 million people that are focused on one point, and they're listening to one person tell them what happened. You know, we landed on the moon, or we made this vaccine that cured polio, even though polio was curing itself for 25 years before that. It doesn't matter, because only the few people at the CDC are the ones that have that information, and they're distributing it, so everyone is just prone to listen. The alternative is to kind of get depressed because you're looking at your health organization and you're doubting them. And who wants to do that? That would be like not believing it rains diamonds on Neptune, or that we haven't conquered the deepest stretches of space. You know, it's expensive to not believe them.
Yeah, and not only expensive, it doesn't make any money, because the truth is that our bodies have the capability of healing themselves under the right conditions.
Yeah. That's why faith is so important, and that's why we've had faith turned into a bureaucratic chain of command system. We've actually ruined our abilities to heal ourselves, because we've been told that the placebo effect, for example, is a strange phenomenon that doesn't really matter that much. But if you look at every single pharmaceutical study, they're trying to mask the placebo. They're trying to convince you that, no, this really was our drug that did it. It wasn't the placebo that healed you, it was our drug. And they'll spend millions of dollars to show you that the 1% increase their drug had over the placebo trial, or 5% actually, because sometimes that's all it is. It's literally like a 5% better. They now think that they have a miracle drug. And as long as you market it that way, people are going to believe it. And that's why kids gravitate to McDonald's. The McDonald's logo has been charged in their mind. That's a sigil. That's an archetype that's been charged in their mind. So they naturally think, if it's not McDonald's, then I'm not going to be happy. It's not going to be a happy meal. It's going to be a sad, sad meal, you know, because it's something that, because we didn't get to go to the exclusive magical place called McDonald's.
Mm-hmm. And we also are conditioned right from the get-go what, let's say, an older person looks like. You know, in advertisement, oh, grandma is always knitting. And yeah, when you hit 50, 60, oh, that is the time when the aches and pains start.
Yeah.
And that is when you will start falling apart.
Yeah.
You just wait until you reach my age.
Mm-hmm.
Many times I am their age and even older. So, but that is the model that we are being fed.
Yeah. I have a chapter in my new book called The Placebo Effect. And it just lists all the facts that people need to know about the placebo effect and just how important magic is to making drugs work. Blue pills are better at being a sedative, and pink pills are better at being a stimulant. Chalk white powder pills are 20% more effective than eating like a plant because we believe that they work more. If you were to emboss your logo into that white pill, like a letter, the letter E or something, that's a 10% gain. It's in a placebo trial. If you were to give someone a sugar pill that was white that had the letter E in it, it would be 10% more effective than without that letter E. If you turn that powder pill into a capsule, a 2-color capsule, it jumps up by like 50%. If you inject saline into someone instead of giving them a sugar pill, it's like a giant jump. It's like 50% increase. If you administer that medicine wearing a white lab coat and holding a clipboard, you get a 15% bump. If that person is older, it's another increase. So the entire medical industry is a voodoo spell. I'm not trying to say that medicine doesn't work and that we don't have a really good handle under triage, you know, of like, I'm sorry, but under like massive, can't think of the word right now, but, you know, like a car crash or something. We definitely have that under control. But the pharmaceutical industry, the industry that we're selling each other pills to solve the fact that maybe we should stop eating red sauce, but instead we want to keep doing that. We want to insist that it's this or insist that it's that. It's all a mind game. The packaging, even the packaging of the pill makes it more effective. Does it come in a fancy box? Is it glossy? Is it black and white? Does it have a lot of big words on the back? All of these things stimulate what this medicine does. And there's a lesson here, but we keep dismissing it. There's something really important about this placebo effect. And that's what I touch on in my book. It's a pill. If you think about what a pill is, it's a literal ritual that you are going through where you're taking something and you're putting it in your body and you put an intent on that small pill. Your intention is that that pill will heal you. And that's a magical ritual that unlocks what's inside your body already. It allows it to come out. It gives your body permission to heal itself. In very much the same way the internet gives us permission to have a psychic connection with someone else across the world. That might sound like a stretch to some people, but I want people to understand that the purpose of controlling us is to find our power, take it away from us, and then give it back to us with some sort of price tag or some sort of collar on it. And that's what they've done with the placebo. They've literally ruined our ability to heal ourselves. After they ruined our ability to think about God on our own terms, because we feel shame by trying to consider our own God, just as we would feel shame by trying to find power in our own body to heal itself. The entire thing is mind control.
Many people are already aware that they are on a sort of human farm, or what you call the prison.
Yep.
Do you think that we are contribute? Oh, la, 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 la. Do you think that we are facilitating this ourselves by, let's say, mistreating other so-called lesser life forms, killing them, eating them, keeping them in horrible conditions like factory farming and so forth? Do you think there is a connection that how we treat so-called lesser life forms is our consent to be treated like we are being treated? Do you see that?
I think it makes us easier to punish ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in that way, I think so. Like from an overall arching karma standpoint, just me personally, I don't buy into karma. I just don't think it works that way. But I do think that if we're conditioned to inspire materialism, if we're conditioned to believe in materialism, we're conditioned to go back to like Rene Descartes and to just literally look at an animal as a machine, and that you could just take it apart and do whatever you wanted to it and it wouldn't mean anything. There's a real sick psychopathy that has slipped in. And with our industrial farming, I think there's an element of that for sure. We have so far to go. Like I am under so much mind control. I mean, I'm hearing you say that, and I have my own issues. I'm not growing my own food. I'm contributing to the system to eat what I eat. And so this isn't me saying, yeah, everyone needs to get right. I'm not right either. I don't know how we're ever going to really get right. I say that because we're bred to be this way. The thing that makes humans so great also makes them so controllable. We're empathic machines. Like we have the ability we have emotional telepathy. In fact, we don't know that we have telepathy, but when I see your face lights up 90% of my brain. It can't help it. And if I see pain on your face, I'm going to feel your pain. If I see joy in your face, I'm going to see your joy. So what makes us powerful, what makes us caring, also makes us manipulable. It makes it very easy to lead us into things. So it would be quite easy to shame someone into torturing another animal, because that's what's happening right now. We've shamed each other enough to where we can step outside of what we're actually doing. And that really is the deeper definition of what psychopathy is, isn't it? It's when one abandons themselves and notices that there's a safety in ignorance. There's a safety in cutting the strings of empathy. It becomes easier to function in the world for so many. And I think that's probably why lies are so important. I think if they keep throwing us with enough lies, more of us are turned every day into a psychopath. And each of us, once we become the psychopath, we instantly start doing better in life because we're able to take advantage of our neighbors and it doesn't affect us so much. So in a way, the satanic system is turning us into that. But I don't think that the satanic system cares enough about animals per se or anything else. I think it's just a system of keep lying, keep lying, keep lying. They'll be so confused. I mean, that's why they tell us we're spinning at 10 times the speed of sound. And that's only after rotating at 1,000 miles per hour on the earth. We're spinning at 1,000 miles per hour on the earth. And then that earth is spinning 10 times the speed of sound. I think it's like 500,000 miles an hour. Once you look at how fast the sun is actually moving, mentally we're told that we're in this constant state of spin. And when you're in that constant state of spin, there's no North Pole. You're completely in a relativistic kind of mind frame. And when you enter into relativity is the breeding ground for Satanism. It's the breeding ground for this corporate mentality we have, where look at how a corporation, a small company doesn't have a lot of theft. But once you have more than 15 people working at an organization, suddenly theft becomes okay. Like it becomes okay to steal office supplies and take them home. And it's no one would ever question that. It's just, well, yeah, it's what I do. I can steal things from work. They don't even look at it as stealing. But that's what I mean. As you enter the satanic system, it becomes easier and easier to justify and to ignore what your own behavior is actually doing. And so that ties into animals too, because if you're stealing Post-it notes and staplers one day, it's not that hard to imagine how in a few more days, you're treating animals cruelly, and you're calling, well, it's just business. Hey man, it's just how business happens. Everyone's got to have business. So, the justifications are all around us. And as more of us are participating, the justifications become less important, because anytime you have a crowd, any crowd mentality will always, a pack of dogs will always reduce themselves to the worst behavior. So if you throw a one bag dog in with 50, in 10 minutes, all 50 dogs now consider what that bag dog does as the new norm. And the same thing happens with people. We enter into a system. Once you get into the crowd, morals go out the window. That's why people get burned at the stake for so many years, because once that crowd is introduced, the individual doesn't, their morals don't matter. It's the crowd justifies everyone else's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
These people know that. That's why they do things like this.
Mm-hmm. And that is why I think it is so true. If you want to change the world, start with yourself.
Yeah, it's the only thing you can change. It's literally the only thing that you can change at all.
Yeah. And another thing that I find so true is, if it is complicated, very convoluted, and you need special people to explain it to you, and you have to follow their doctrines, then that is usually nonsense.
That's what I mean by that bottleneck. Yeah, that's exactly right. The CO2 debate is a perfect example of that. If you actually follow the science, what they're claiming happens with CO2, it literally comes down to 1 part of 1,000th of a millionth of a percent of a theory. It's even a theory. It's not even proven. Yeah. That 1,000th of a millionth of a percent of an increase in carbon could potentially, maybe possibly cause this to happen, but we have no proof of that. Meanwhile, if we look back in our fossil records, we see a world full of CO2. We see dragonflies as big as cars because we had so much CO2. So this notion that CO2 kills life is simply not true. In fact, it's kind of a shitty thing to do to trees. Our trees require CO2. Trees ingest the living breath of man. So it's really, I really get angry when I hear people shame that. It's, what did the trees do to you? Why have we decided that trees are terrible? Because they breathe CO2 too. I mean, it's the most important piece of life on this planet, you could argue, is trees. And they require CO2. It's just all madness.
Yeah, but that is how their shitty magic works. That's what is needed for other life forms to thrive and survive. They tell you that is evil, and you have to reduce it by all means. And you know what? By the way, you better give up having children as well.
Yeah, yeah. They just said that. One of our politicians just said that the other day, and that's the perfect way to shame. But I think that's what the LGBT movement has been. I think it's really a secret eugenics program that's disguised as a civil rights movement, because every single person who's in the LGBT movement has actually committed to one thing, which is they're not going to reproduce. Now, they're not going around saying, I will not reproduce. But if you're claiming that you're going to have a relationship with anyone except for a heterosexual relationship, the end result of that is that you're not going to reproduce. So in a lot of ways, the LGBT movement is a pride parade, a pride of self-destruction. It's I am so proud of myself because I am throwing away my bloodline. They're literally taking their bloodline and saying, this bloodline will never see the earth anymore. And I'm proud of that. That's why I'm taking off my clothes and celebrating. Like this is liberation somehow. So.
And another thing with that movement is, I think, once you have everybody confused about their gender, it is very easy to convince them, oh, you know what, merge with the machine. It's the best you can do. And we edit that cancer gene out with CRISPR. and you know what, and then we hook you up to,
Mhm.
to our computer. And the other thing that I see, and I would say that because in general, I don't care what you do between the sheets, as
Mhm.
long as you do not abuse children and animals, I
Mhm.
really don't care.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone really cares.
Yeah,
Like, really.
but I would highly recommend that LGBT movement, you know, not to add the P to it, the pedophiles,
Yeah.
you know, like LGBTP.
Yeah. 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 Um, Even the Vatican understands that no one really cares what you do in private with your genitals. Like it's in fact, why are we even talking about it? Like it, it really doesn't make a lot of sense at all. But if you look through history, because of the shame, it's really important that the shame stays, because that shame, if you look at Mithraism or some of the ancient cults in Rome, those were actually sealed by homosexuality. A lot of secret societies are sealed by homosexuality. And the only reason why that seal works is because there's a shame stigma to it. If there was no shame stigma to it, then that could not be used as a bonding ritual to join the secret society or the fraternity even. It's this idea that you've done something shameful in front of your brothers and they've witnessed it that creates a cohesion in this gang. And so that same thing has basically been transmitted throughout the world in our politics. It's what Rome calls the outer church. Um, and when I say Rome, I shouldn't mean that specifically. I'm trying to separate the good from the bad in Rome. I have trouble doing that. I tend to just say it's all bad, and it's actually not true. But the black magic part of that is going to constantly want to keep that shame high as it possibly can. So it can create some kind of bonding agent like that in the future.
Hmm.
And that's why secret societies are so much more important than government. I think that's why masquerade balls were so big in the 17th century. These were secret societies that were literally walking in the street in public, showing off. You know, we're the aristocrats, we're the ones in charge. You want to become one of us. So they would have these grand masquerade balls, and the new recruits would come and try and impress them, you know, to get an invitation to join this secret society. And if you just add that up, next thing you know, you've got countries that are being formed inside of a secret society, and no one has any idea, you know, that that's how it happened.
Hmm. What is your take on, yeah, let's say your feeling? I guess that is more a feeling. Do you have the impression that something big is coming this way, that you cannot really point it out, you cannot really say what it is, but it is this gut feeling that
Yeah.
there is something coming that we cannot really control?
I think part of mind control uses that, um, that, what's the word? That premonition, that idea that something's coming, as they use it in two ways. On one way, they use it for hope, as in, don't worry, Barack Obama's coming. You know, there's going to be a savior, right? But then on another way, they use it from the other way, which is doom is coming. You know, our planet in 12 years, that's what one of our politicians says, in 12 years, there's no more life on the planet. But those are used in the same way. That's a shame and a fame kind of thing. You know, it's give up. What's the point? Or hang tight, man. Don't do anything crazy because help is on the way. Both those hypnotize the chicken. Both those create the exact same state inside the human, which is a state of waiting and apprehension. So the first thing that I have to answer is I have to say that up front, is that this is a form of mind control.
Mhm.
However, with that said, I think Greater Israel is coming. I think we will see Saudi Arabia has already been divided up, I think, on paper with the people that matter. We just don't know it yet. We will see peace in the Middle East for a while because Israel's been given this thing, and it'll just sort of be something that they'll do. But that peace will only come after more migrants are ejected from that area, purely because they need the flow. They just need that to happen. While that's happening, sadly, I think America might be a next kind of sacrifice, like a Passover lamb kind of sacrifice thing. I think if anything big was to happen, it would be in America. It would be like a nuclear explosion or something, and it'll be blamed on Islamic terrorists. And then that'll create the whole war, which will take us back to the Temple Mount, which was created a long time ago. You know, here's 3 books. We're dividing the world up into 3 books. And these 3 books are going to meet in the end. Just like, you know, there are 3 obelisks, just like there are 3 power centers, there's 3 books. And those 3 books will be brought to the final, you know, the semifinal game round where they're going to take it on. And it's going to all happen, you know, there at Jerusalem. So in order to get that to happen, America's full of guns. It's full of people that believe in individual rights. America probably represents the biggest threat. Maybe Australia might be in there too, but like a really big threat, although Australia's not armed, so I take that back. I would think that it would be America. And sometimes I worry that the wall is why we're building the wall right now.
To keep you in.
Yeah, we need a containment system for this. And meanwhile, because 5G is being adopted so easily, it may be that they just don't even need to do anything bigger than that. Like all they really have to do is just install 5G, because now you've got a microwave fence line and there's nothing you can do about that. You know, not to mention once IoT, the Internet of Things, really takes off, there will be no more free thought. I think at that point, everything will be dictated. We'll still feel that we have free thought in some way, but it'll be free thought like, well, I can choose Twitter over Facebook. Like it'll be that kind of thing where those are the freedoms that we think we'll have that will make it feel free enough to us where we'll be content to just keep going.
Which would be an interesting subject for our next talk. Are we our thoughts? I don't think so.
No, I'm not sure if we're our thoughts either. I could argue that sometimes someone will have a very similar thought that I'm having, and we'll meet the next day and we'll find that out. And I think those people are cycling their brain, their router, in a similar way that I am. And because of that, we're both going to be receiving the same radio station of thought. And that thought's going to come in. Doesn't mean we don't have free will. It just means that our thoughts are not where we exercise our free will. We exercise our free will in our awareness. The amount of consciousness we imbue into our body is really what we know free will to be. And it's only when we become more conscious of our bodies that we will find ourselves crawling as fast as we can under that briar patch and not really caring how painful it is, because we have a new awareness in our own consciousness, in our own body. Now, certainly if enough of us were to do that, then I think things would certainly change. But it's hard to say if that's going to be, you know, something that we can do. It doesn't feel like we are able to do that. Yes, more are waking up, but I don't know if enough are waking up quick enough by the time they've installed the next form, you know, of control over us.
Yeah. James, tell people where they can find your work.
Please visit my website at jtrue.com, J as in James, TRUE.com. And there I keep a free column. Love it if you would subscribe. I can send you an email, just let you know, hey, my next column's out. Usually my columns are about once a week, but sometimes more. It just depends on the subject and how deep it is. Right now I'm in deep research on maybe my next book. This idea I told you about earlier about reversing the Bible, sort of unpeeling the bloodlines from that. So I'm doing a lot of research on that. So I'm only doing a column maybe about once a week. This book is brand new. This has maybe been out about a month. So I'd love it if you guys would read it. Tell me what you think, and share it as you see fit. It is in English though, so I don't know how many people are going to even want to do that. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Okay.
Thank you so much for coming. I had a wonderful time and it just flew by like nothing.
Yeah, me too. It was great. I enjoyed your perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, that was Night Flight for today. I hope you enjoyed this edition and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.